I didn't slam the phone down. I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, "I'll see you at the office tomorrow at 2 p.m., Marcus," and ended the call. My hands were steady as I set the phone on my desk. Steady, even though my son had just told me, for the third time this month, that he didn't have time to discuss the loan situation. The loan situation. That's what he called the $250,000 I'd given him 6 years ago to start his company. "Dad, I'm running a business here," he'd said, his voice tight with irritation. "I can't drop everything because you want to talk about ancient history. The company's worth $12 million now. You should be proud. Not, whatever this is. Whatever this is." I looked out my window at the Austin skyline. The tech boom had been good to this city. Good to my son, too. His company, Data Stream Analytics, occupied 3 floors in one of those gleaming buildings downtown. Meanwhile, I sat in my home office in the house I'd lived in for 35 years. The house where Marcus had grown up, learning to code on the computer I'd bought him when he was 12. I pulled a folder from my desk drawer. Inside were documents I hadn't looked at in years. Documents I'd hoped I'd never need to look at again. The loan agreement was on top. Not a loan agreement, actually, an investment agreement. Dated the 15th of March 2019. I read the relevant section for what must have been the 100th time that week. In exchange for initial capital of $250,000, Richard Morrison shall receive 40% equity in Data Stream Analytics, LLC, with standard dilution protections and board observer rights. 40%. Not a loan. Equity. But Marcus didn't remember it that way. Or he chose not to. Let me back up. Let me tell you how we got here. 6 years ago, Marcus came to me with a dream. He'd been working as a data analyst at a Fortune 500 company, making decent money, but he was miserable. Every night at dinner, he was still living with me then. Saving money after his divorce, he'd talk about the inefficiencies he saw, the solutions he could build, the market opportunities everyone else was missing. "I need $300,000 to do this right," he'd said one evening in January 2019. "Enough to hire 2 developers, get office space, build the product properly, but the banks won't touch me. No collateral, no business history. And investors want to see traction before they'll write a check." I'd listened. I'd asked questions. I'd spent 2 weeks reviewing his business plan, talking to people I knew in tech, doing my homework. The idea was solid. Marcus was brilliant with data. Always had been. But $300,000 was everything I had liquid. My retirement savings. The money I'd been setting aside since my wife died, planning for a future I wasn't even sure I wanted anymore. "I can give you $250,000, I'd told him. "But not as a loan, son. As an investment. I'll be a partner in this. 40% equity. That's what an angel investor would take for this kind of early-stage risk." He'd hugged me. Actually hugged me. Something he hadn't done since he was a teenager. "Dad, this is going to change everything. I'm going to make you so proud. And rich." He'd laughed at that last part. We'd signed papers. My lawyer, Tom Rodriguez, had drawn up a proper operating agreement. Everything legal, everything clear. Or so I thought. The first year was hard. Marcus worked 100-hour weeks. I helped where I could not with the technical stuff, but with business basics, bookkeeping, vendor negotiations, things I'd learned in my own career in manufacturing. We had dinner every Sunday. He'd update me on progress, challenges, small victories. Year 2, they got their first major client. A healthcare company that needed help managing patient data. The contract was worth $400,000. Marcus was ecstatic. "We're going to make it, Dad. We're actually going to make it." I asked about dividends, about when the company might start paying out. He'd looked uncomfortable. "Not yet. We need to reinvest everything. Hire more people, build more features. You understand, right?" I understood. "Startups need to grow." I'd said yes. Year 3, they got venture capital. A firm out of California invested $2 million at a valuation of $8 million. Marcus called me from the airport. flying back from the meeting. We did it. This is real now, Dad. We're a real company. I'd asked about my equity. Don't worry, he'd said. You're still protected. Anti-dilution clauses. Remember? You're at 32% now, but that's still worth over $2.5 million on paper. On paper. I'd noticed he didn't mention dividends again. Year 4 was when things started to change. Marcus moved into a luxury apartment downtown, bought a Tesla, started dating a woman named Vanessa, who worked in venture capital. Our Sunday dinners became less frequent. Once a month. Then every few months. Then only holidays. When I did see him, he was different. Sharper, somehow. More polished. He wore expensive suits. Talked about funding rounds and market positioning and exit strategies. He'd hired a business partner, Derek Chen, a guy from Silicon Valley with an MBA from Stanford. Derek became his right hand, his confidant. And me? I became Dad who helped out once. Last Thanksgiving, we'd been at my house. Just the two of us. Vanessa had gone to Aspen with her family. I'd cooked turkey, made his favorite stuffing, the way his mother used to make it. After dinner, I'd brought up the company. Business is good? I'd asked. Great. We're at 10 million revenue this year, projecting 15 next year. That's wonderful, son. Have you thought about maybe starting some profit distributions? Even small ones. I'm 62 now. Starting to think about what retirement looks like. He'd set down his fork. Dad, you can't think about DataStream as a piggy bank. It's a growth company. Every dollar we make goes back into building value. That's how you create a successful exit. I'm not asking for much, Marcus. Just something to acknowledge the risk I took. Risk you took? Dad, I'm the one who built this company. Me and Derek. We're the ones putting in 80-hour weeks. You wrote a check 6 years ago. One time, I'd felt something cold settle in my chest. And it's grown 400%. You should be thrilled. I'd be thrilled if I saw any of it. I'd be thrilled if you invited me to board meetings like we agreed. Observer rights aren't the same as a board seat. And honestly, Dad, you wouldn't understand half of what we discuss. No offense. But manufacturing and tech are different worlds. That's when he'd said it. The thing that had been echoing in my head for months. Maybe it's time we had a serious conversation about buying you out. I'll talk to Derek and our lawyers about a fair price for your shares. Something reasonable, based on what you originally invested plus, I don't know, 10%? Generous? Marcus, the company's worth $12 million. 15% of my original investment would be. I know what the math is. But let's be real. You didn't build this. You gave me seed money when no one else would. But my equity, Derek's equity, our team's equity that was earned, yours was just provided. I'd wanted to throw him out right then. Instead, I'd said, I think you should leave, Marcus. He'd left. And I'd spent Christmas alone for the first time since my wife died. That was 4 months ago. Since then, every conversation had gone the same way. He was too busy. He'd call me back. We'd talk about it later. Derek thought it would be better to wait until after the next funding round. The lawyers were looking into it. Excuses. So yes, when he told me this morning that he didn't have time to discuss the loan situation, I didn't argue. I made an appointment, and then I made another call. Rodriguez Law Offices. Tom, it's Richard Morrison. I need to exercise my rights under the DataStream operating agreement. There was a pause. Tom had been my lawyer for 20 years. He'd drawn up my will when my wife died. He'd handled my business contracts when I was still working. And he'd drafted the DataStream agreement, warning me at the time to make sure everything was airtight. The equity agreement? He asked. Yes. Richard, are you sure? Once you go down this road, I'm sure. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? I need to understand all my options. 9 a.m. I'll pull the files. I spent that evening going through every document I had, bank statements showing the wire transfer of $250,000, emails from those early days where Marcus called me partner and talked about our company. The operating agreement with my signature and his. Notarized and dated. Board observer rights. I'd never been invited to exercise. Anti-dilution protections that had been honored, technically, but never explained to me in any meaningful way. And then I found something else. Something I'd forgotten about. In year 2, when cash was tight, Marcus had asked me for another $50,000. Just a bridge loan until the client payment comes through, he'd said. I'd wired it the same day. He'd promised to pay it back within 90 days. That was 4 years ago. I'd never asked for it. Never mentioned it. It had seemed petty to worry about $50,000 when we were building something together. But now, looking at my bank statements, doing the math on what I'd lived on for the past 6 years while my son drove a Tesla and lived in a luxury apartment, that $50,000 felt different. I made a list. Original investment, $250,000. 40% equity, now diluted to 32%. Additional loan, $50,000 unpaid. No formal agreement. Current company valuation, $12 million per Marcus. My equity value, $3,840,000. Dividends received, $0. Board meetings attended, 0. Financial statements received, 0. Tom's office smelled like coffee and old law books. He'd been practicing for 35 years, and his office looked like it. Diplomas on the wall, family photos, shelves packed with legal texts that probably hadn't been opened since everything went digital. Richard. He shook my hand, gestured to a chair. I've reviewed the data stream agreement. It's solid. Everything we discussed. Can you walk me through what I can actually do? He opened a folder. You have several options. First, as a 32% equity holder, you have the right to access all company financial records. They're required to provide them within 15 business days of a written request. Marcus never did that. Did you request them in writing? I shook my head. That's on you then. Verbal requests don't trigger the legal obligation, but you can fix that today. He slid a form across the desk. Standard records request. I can send it on your behalf. What else? Your operating agreement includes tag-along rights. If Marcus or any majority holder tries to sell their stake, you have the right to sell your proportional stake in the same deal, at the same terms. He's not selling. Not yet. But when companies get to this valuation, acquisition talks start happening. You want to be ready. What about dividends? Can I force a distribution? Tom leaned back in his chair. That's trickier. The operating agreement gives broad discretion to company management on reinvestment decisions. As a minority shareholder, you'd have a hard time forcing distributions unless you could prove financial mismanagement or self-dealing. Self-dealing? Paying himself excessive compensation. Taking money out in ways that aren't disclosed. Things like that, which is why I need those financial records. Exactly. He paused. Richard, what are you really trying to accomplish here? Do you want money? Control? To teach your son a lesson? I thought about that. What did I want? I want him to remember that I'm not just dad who helped out once. I'm his partner. I took a risk when no one else would. And I want what I'm owed. Not as a gift. As a right. Then here's what we do. We send the records request today. We review what comes back. And we look for leverage. Every company has something. Expense reports that don't quite add up. Compensation that's above market. Related party transactions that weren't disclosed. We find it. And we negotiate from a position of strength. And if there's nothing, there's always something. I signed the records request. Tom sent it by email and certified mail. Under the operating agreement, Marcus had 15 business days to comply. He called me 6 hours later. What the hell, Dad? You're sicking lawyers on me now? I requested financial records. That's my right as an equity holder. You could have just asked me. I did ask you. Multiple times. You were too busy. This is different. This is hostile. Derek's freaking out. Our VC is asking questions. Do you know what this looks like? It looks like a minority shareholder exercising his legal rights. You're going to tank our next funding round. Investors don't want drama. They want clean cap tables and aligned stakeholders. Then, maybe you should have kept me aligned, Marcus. There was a long silence. When he spoke again, his voice was colder. Fine. You want to play hardball? We'll send you the financials. Every boring spreadsheet and bank statement. And then, you're going to see that everything we've done has been above board, and you're going to feel like an idiot for not trusting me. 2 p.m. tomorrow, I said. Your office. We can go through them together. I have a meeting. Cancel it. I hung up before he could argue. That night, I barely slept. I kept running scenarios in my head. What would I find in those records? What if Tom was wrong? What if everything was clean? And I was just a bitter old man who couldn't accept that his son had outgrown him. But then I remembered Thanksgiving. The way Marcus had looked at me when he said, "You didn't build this." Like I was a stranger. Like my investment had been charity, not partnership. No. I wasn't wrong to ask questions. The data stream offices were everything I'd imagined. Glass walls, standing desks, a coffee bar that looked like it belonged in a trendy cafe. Young people in hoodies and expensive sneakers tapped away at keyboards. A reception desk with a perky woman who clearly didn't know who I was. "I'm here to see Marcus Morrison. I'm his father." Her face lit up. "Oh, Mr. Morrison. Marcus has told me so much about you. He'll be right out." I doubted Marcus had told her much at all. He appeared 5 minutes later, looking stressed. No hug, barely a handshake. "Dad, conference room's this way." We passed Derek's office. He was on the phone, but he looked up when we walked by. Our eyes met for a second. He didn't smile. The conference room had a window overlooking downtown Austin. Marcus set down a laptop and a thick folder. "Here. Every financial statement for the last 6 years. Bank records, payroll, expenses, everything. I'll need time to review. We can go through it now." I cleared my afternoon. It didn't sound like a generous offer. It sounded like he wanted this done. I opened the folder. The first page was a summary. Profit and loss. For the most recent fiscal year. Revenue, $10.2 million. Expenses, $8.7 million. Net income, $1.5 million. You made $1.5 million last year? We reinvested it. Look at the balance sheet. Cash reserves, R&D costs. New hires. Like and why. Of R&D. However one. I kept flipping. Payroll records showed Marcus's salary. $200,000 per year. Derek's. $225,000. Derek makes more than you? He's the COO. He manages operations. It's market rate. For a company you started with my money. With seed funding. Which you've been compensated for through equity appreciation. Paper appreciation. Marcus, in 6 years, I've received exactly $0 from this company. Because we're growing. Do you want a successful exit, or do you want to nickel and dime profits every quarter, like some... He stopped himself. Like some what? Some old man who doesn't understand tech? He rubbed his face. This was a mistake. You're never going to understand how startups work. I kept reading. Expense reports. Travel, a lot of travel. Marcus and Derek had flown to San Francisco 14 times in the past year. First class. Hotels at the Ritz-Carlton. Dinners that cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. These expenses. Business development. Investor meetings. Client dinners. All standard. $800 for dinner? With a client who signed $1 million contract. Return on investment, Dad. I found another section. What's this? DMA Consulting LLC? Marcus's jaw tightened. A contractor we use. For what? Strategic advisory services. Who owns DMA Consulting? That's not relevant. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And I saw my answer in his face. You. Or Derek. It's Derek's side business. Completely legal. He provides consulting hours that are outside the scope of his employment agreement. How much has DataStream paid DMA Consulting? Marcus didn't answer. I found the line, item, over the past 3 years, $340,000. You've paid Derek's shell company $340,000 while telling me you can't afford dividends? It's not a shell company. He does real work, and he invoices below market rate. Marcus. I closed the folder. This is exactly what Tom said to look for. Who's Tom? My lawyer. He said there's always something. Some way that management takes money out while telling minority shareholders there's nothing to take. And here it is. Marcus stood up. You know what? I'm done. You want to play lawyer games? Fine. Have your lawyer talk to my lawyer. But don't sit there and act like I've done something wrong. I built this company. I brought in Derek. We worked our asses off while you sat in your house collecting equity you didn't earn. Didn't earn? Marcus, I gave you every liquid asset I had 6 years ago, and you've never let me forget it. Every conversation. There it is. Remember when I gave you that money? Like you're the only reason we're successful. Like the thousands of hours, the missed holidays, the stress and risk, none of that matters compared to your check. I never said. You didn't have to. It's in every look, every question. When are you going to pay me back? This isn't a loan, Dad. You're not owed a return on investment just because you're my father. You're right. I'm owed it because I'm your partner. Your 40% partner. Before dilution. And partners don't hide consulting payments. Partners don't get shut out of board meetings. Partners get treated with respect. The door opened. Derek walked in without knocking. Everything okay in here? Fine, Marcus said. Doesn't sound fine. I could hear you down the hall. I looked at Derek. Mid-30s. Expensive watch. Cocky smile that said he thought he was the smartest guy in every room. You must be the partner, I said. COO. But yes, partner in the sense that I own 20% of the company and run day-to-day operations and run DMA Consulting. His smile didn't waver. A separate entity, properly disclosed in all relevant tax documents. Completely legal. Legal and ethical aren't always the same thing. Mr. Morrison, I understand you're upset that you haven't seen a cash return on your initial investment. But surely you understand the startup model. Rapid growth requires capital reinvestment. Your equity has increased in value by over 500%. Most investors would be thrilled. Most investors get regular financial statements. Most investors get invited to board meetings. Derek glanced at Marcus. The operating agreement specifies observer rights, not board participation. And financial statements are available upon request, which, to be fair, you never made until yesterday. I'm making it now, and you have them. So what exactly is the problem? I stood up. I looked at both of them. Marcus, my son, who I'd held as a baby, who I'd taught to ride a bike, who'd cried on my shoulder when his marriage fell apart, and Derek, the stranger who'd somehow become more important to my son than I was. The problem, I said quietly, is that you've forgotten who made all of this possible. Not just the money, the belief, the support, the fact that when Marcus came to me with a dream and no one else would listen, I said yes, and we're grateful Derek started. Don't. I cut him off. Don't tell me what you're grateful for. I picked up the folder. I'm taking these to my lawyer. We're going to review every line, every transaction, every dollar that went to DMA Consulting or flew first class to San Francisco. And if we find that management has been taking money out while refusing to pay dividends to minority shareholders, we're going to have a very different conversation about equity and fairness. Marcus's face had gone pale. Dad, you can't be serious. You'd sue me? I'd sue my partner, who's been cheating me. The fact that you're my son makes it worse, not better. I walked to the door, turned back. I'll be in touch through Tom. All communications should go through him from now on. This is insane, Derek said. Marcus, don't let him. Shut up, Derek. Marcus's voice was raw. Just shut up. I left. I made it to my car before my hands started shaking. Not from anger. From something deeper. Grief. Maybe. For the relationship I'd thought we had. For the son who'd become someone I didn't recognize. My phone rang before I'd even left the parking lot. Tom, how'd it go? Found what you said I'd find. Related party transactions. Derek's consulting company. How much? $340,000. Over 3 years. Tom whistled. That'll do it. Bring me the files. We'll draft a letter. What kind of letter? The kind that explains what a breach of fiduciary duty looks like. The kind that mentions words like derivative lawsuit and forensic accounting. The kind that gets settled. I don't want to destroy his company, Tom. You won't. But you'll get what you're owed. Trust me. The letter went out 3 days later. It was 5 pages of legal language that boiled down to, pay me, or I'll force you to. Specifically, it demanded immediate repayment of the $50,000, loan with interest, a full forensic audit of all related party transactions, my participation in all board meetings going forward, quarterly dividend distributions of at least 30% of net income, or, alternatively, a buyout of my equity at fair market value, determined by independent valuation, not management's proposed lowball offer. Marcus called me 23 times that first day. I didn't answer. On the 24th call, I picked up. Dad, please, we need to talk. I agree. You, me, Derek, and our lawyers. Tom's available Thursday. Derek wants to fight this. He says you don't have a case. Then he has nothing to worry about. But the VC, they're threatening to pull out of our Series B if there's ongoing litigation. This could kill the company. Then maybe Derek should have thought of that before he paid himself $340,000 through a shell company. It's not a shell company. God. Why won't you listen to me? I did listen, Marcus. For 6 years. I'm done listening. Now it's your turn. Silence on the line. What do you want? He finally asked. Really? I want what the operating agreement says I'm entitled to. No more, no less. And I want you to stop treating me like a stranger who did you a favor once and should be grateful for the crumbs. I never. Yes, you did. Thanksgiving. You didn't build this. Remember? More silence. I was angry, stressed about the Series B. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. How did you mean it? I don't know. Dad, this company is everything to me. It's my whole identity. And sometimes, when you talk about it like it's yours too, I feel like I haven't accomplished anything on my own. There it was. The truth under all of it. Marcus, I never wanted to take credit for your success. I'm proud of what you built. Genuinely proud. But I did take a risk. A real one. And partnership means acknowledging that, not erasing it. I know. Do you? I'm starting to. Thursday's meeting lasted 4 hours. It was me, Marcus, Derek, Tom, and their corporate attorney, a woman named Patricia Kwan, who looked like she billed $800 an hour. Patricia opened with the expected. The related party transactions were disclosed, approved by the board, which consisted of Marcus, Derek, and one VC representative, and within market rates for the services provided. Tom countered with the fact that I, as a significant minority shareholder, had never been informed of these transactions, despite my observer rights, and that approval by a board that included Derek himself was inherently conflicted. We went back and forth. Forensic audit too expensive. Independent valuation not necessary. Dividend policy management's discretion. Then Tom dropped the hammer. Here's what concerns me, Patricia. Your clients have taken $340,000 out of the company through DMA Consulting while simultaneously telling my client there's no money for dividends. They've flown first class and stayed at luxury hotels, while my client, who funded this entire venture, has received 0 return in 6 years. There won't be a jury. This would be arbitration under the operating agreement. Fine. An arbitrator then. One who'll wonder why a COO, making $225,000, needs an additional consulting agreement. One who'll ask why a company with $1.5 million in net income can't afford to distribute even $100,000 to shareholders. Derek spoke up. Those consulting fees were for strategic work. That's not in your job description? Tom didn't even look at him. Save it for the arbitrator. Patricia called for a break. 20 minutes later, she came back with an offer. My clients are willing to do the following. Repay the $50,000 loan with 5% annual interest. Provide quarterly financial statements going forward. And invite Mr. Morrison to attend board meetings as an observer, as stipulated in the operating agreement. What about dividends? I asked. They're willing to consider a dividend policy starting next fiscal year, pending business performance. Not good enough, Tom said. Firm commitment to distribute 25% of net income quarterly, starting this quarter. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. Derek was glaring at me. That'll cripple our growth, Derek said. No, it won't, Tom replied. You distributed $340,000 to yourself over 3 years. Surely you can distribute a proportional amount to all shareholders. Another break. This one lasted an hour. When they came back, Patricia looked tired. Final offer, $50,000. Loan repayment, plus interest, $62,000. Total, paid within 30 days. Quarterly distributions of 15% of net income, starting next quarter, with a review after 1 year to assess impact on growth. Full financial transparency, quarterly statements, and observer status at all board meetings. And, one more thing, she looked at Marcus. He nodded. Mr. Morrison Richard will be formally recognized in all company materials as a founding investor and advisor, meaning his contribution will be acknowledged in pitch decks, on the website, in investor materials. Derek looked furious. Marcus looked defeated. But he spoke anyway. It should have been there from the start, Dad. I'm sorry it wasn't. I looked at Tom. He gave a small nod. It was a good deal. Better than we'd probably get in arbitration. One more thing, I said. What? Derek snapped. DMA Consulting's contract ends. Immediately. Any strategic advisory work Derek provides is part of his COO duties and covered by his salary. No more side deals. That's Derek started. Not negotiable, I finished. Patricia looked at Marcus. He looked at Derek. Some silent communication passed between them. Finally, Derek shrugged. Fine. We signed the settlement agreement that afternoon. I walked out of that conference room with a check for $62,000, a promise of quarterly dividends that would work out to about $120,000 per year, and something I hadn't expected, my son, following me to my car. Dad. Wait. I turned. He looked smaller somehow, less polished, more like the kid who'd hugged me 6 years ago. I really am sorry. Not just legally sorry, really sorry. I let Derek convince me that you were just an early investor, someone who'd done their part and should be happy with equity appreciation. But you were right. You're my partner. And more than that, you're my father. I shouldn't have needed a lawsuit to remember that. I wanted to stay angry. Part of me thought I should. But looking at him, I just felt tired. Why did you let Derek have so much control? He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. After the divorce, after feeling like a failure, he made me feel capable again. Smart, like I could actually do this. And I guess I let that turn into something else. Let him matter more than he should have. He's not your father, Marcus. I know. But he also doesn't have expectations I'm terrified of failing to meet. That hit me harder than anything he'd said in the conference room. What expectations? That I'll be like you. Strong. Certain. Someone who knows what he's doing. Dad, you raised me alone after Mom died. You built a career, raised a kid, never complained. And here I am, making millions. And I still feel like I'm pretending to know what I'm doing. Marcus, every parent makes their kid feel that way sometimes. But I never wanted you to be me. I wanted you to be better. And you are. This company, what you built, it's incredible. I just wanted to be part of it, not erased from it. He nodded, wiped his eyes. When did my son start crying in parking lots? Can we try again? Not just legally, but really. Dinners. Conversations that aren't about money. I pulled him into a hug. He held on tight, like he used to when he was little and afraid of thunderstorms. Yeah, son. We can try. That was 3 months ago. Here's what's happened since. The $62,000 check cleared. I deposited it in a savings account. I don't need it right now, but it felt good to have it acknowledged. The first quarterly dividend was $112,000. I received $35,840. I bought a new car, nothing fancy, just something reliable, and put the rest in investments. For retirement, for real this time. I've attended 3 board meetings. Mostly I listen. Occasionally I ask questions that make Derek uncomfortable, which I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy. But I also contribute. Ideas from my manufacturing background that sometimes apply. Perspective from someone who isn't trying to impress VCs. Marcus and I have dinner every other Sunday. We talk about the business, sure, but also about life. About whether he wants to try dating again. About whether I'm lonely in that big house by myself. I am, sometimes, but I tell him I'm fine. Derek and I have an understanding. We're not friends. We won't be. But we're professional. He stopped making snide comments about legacy investors around the same time DMA Consulting dissolved. Funny how that worked out. The company hit $14 million in revenue this year. There's talk of a Series B that might value us at $25 million. My equity stake would be worth $8 million. Not bad for an old man who didn't build this. But the money isn't the point anymore. The point is that when Marcus introduces me to new investors, he says, "This is my father, Richard. He's our founding investor and the reason any of this exists, and he means it." The point is that when I look at financial statements now, I see a company I'm part of. Not just an investment, a partnership. The point is that my son calls me on Tuesdays just to talk. No agenda, no tension, just checking in. And the point is that I learned something through all of this. Grace isn't weakness. It's strength with boundaries. I could have walked away from Marcus, could have fought harder, tried to destroy what he built out of spite or hurt, but I didn't want revenge. I wanted respect, and I wanted my son back. Sometimes you get both, if you're patient enough. And if you're willing to fight for what you're owed, not with anger, but with quiet certainty. I didn't slam the phone down. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood my ground. And in the end, that was enough.